Good morning, everyone. An exceedingly warm welcome to Build Back Better, the inaugural e-conference aimed at the highway sector. And there's nothing I'd like to be able to do more right now than to shake your hand as you came through the door. So the best I can do is to convey my heartfelt appreciation and thanks to everyone who's joined us today. You know what it's like. Sometimes you haven't seen someone for a long time, or you've potentially forgotten about someone or someone to catch up. Well, it's not so easy on these e-conferences, but all the same, I very much appreciate you joining us. I suppose the flip side of not physically seeing one another is that I'm making the assumption that your journey time to this conference was quick and you didn't get stuck in any traffic. So there is the pluses and the minuses. I should introduce myself. I'm Gary Spencer, and I was involved in founding MEON over 26 years ago, and we're very pleased to be able to host and sponsor this event, which is actually being coordinated from our production studio in Portsmouth in the UK. We've got presenters, speakers and audience from all over the UK and Ireland. So right from the inception of MEON, our purpose has been to add value to the sectors in which we work via shared knowledge, collaboration and really a sense of community underlined with a tangible contribution to the society in general. We've got our part to play as a sector, as individuals, as companies. We come together to contribute. Like most, if not everyone, everything came up for review in March when the pandemic set in, and we took stock and had a look out over the sector. And there's three takeaways, things that I noticed, we noted down together, I should say. Firstly, that the industry barely stopped working. As soon as it was acceptable ways of working and safe ways of working were established and agreed on, it was back to work. And I think one of our presenters talks about the maybe it was a couple of days a week, maybe 2 weeks at the outside, that the industry wasn't working. That's the first point. Secondly, was that it's clear that the sector had a very clear part to play in the maintenance and rebirth of the national economy. We sort of got the tag of essential workers in terms of keeping the strategic road network open for both trade and for carrying essential services. That's the second point. And finally, the third point we noted was that there's likely to be some early funding available from the government to kickstart the whole rebuilding of the economy, and we're seeing that an accelerated programme. So often we look to the fall of the year, September, October, November, when there was a whole slew of conferences, exhibitions, annual general meetings that take place to recap on what the year has been and consider the year ahead, and that's in the normal way of working. And then suddenly all these events were cancelled, nothing's happening. So the sort of perfect storm was appearing, the need to work together more than ever before, complete review of everything, funding coming our way, and then an acceleration of the programme for that funding to be executed. And there's no forum to discuss or share good practice. And it's during a conversation along these lines with George Lee of Blue Symmetry. Many remember him from his days at RSMA mostly, and the responsibilities in the sector. It's during that conversation that the idea of this Build Back Better event was born, like an e-conference that people could join through the day as subjects come up that's relevant to their interest. So George will be our MC for the day. I'll let him explain shortly on the theory behind Build Back Better, where that comes from, and give a bit of an overview for the day. Before I hand over, I just wanted to emphasise how important your feedback and contribution as attendees are. So at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A button where we welcome your input, very much so. So after each presentation, there'll be a Q&A session where we hope to answer all inquiries live, although should time not permit, we pledge to reply and cover any inquiry off post-event. Few industries or personnel really haven't suffered in some way over the past few months, and we've been trying to think of a way to show some solidarity and thoughtfulness to those people, and we've opted to contribute as a company £5 to 3 selected charities for every delegate who attends this event. So the 3 charities are Break, that's the road safety charity; Sustrans, it's the charity that makes it easier for people to walk and cycle, very much been in focus just recently; and then the Lighthouse Club, which is an umbrella organisation that's been set up to support the construction industry. And if you have a quick skim through these websites, which I have done just yesterday, and you can quickly see the effect the pandemic has had on their resources in terms of events being cancelled and people stopping subscriptions and regular donations. So I hope you can join me in voting for your preferred charity if you haven't already. The link to choose which charity is in an email you should have received yesterday, and if not, that same link will be available at the end of the day, and you will receive it also in some post event communication. So we recognise that some attendees may not be able to listen in all day today and have differing areas of interest according to the presentation topic. But in any event, please make yourself comfortable and we hope you enjoy the day. So with that, I'd like to hand over to George. Thank you, George.
Good morning and welcome to the 250 registered attendees booked onto this Build Back Better conference brought to you by MEON. For those of you who don't know me, my name is George Lee. I'm Senior Consultant at Blue Symmetry, which is a specialist stakeholder management and PR consultancy operating within the highway sector. If you want more info or background, please see my profile LinkedIn. The focus of today's event is on trying to understand how the highway sector and all that make up that sector, whether clients, contractors, small and large, and I guess consultants too, can play their part in building back better, delivering a stronger, more resilient, sustainable and economically supportive highways network in post-COVID Britain. The event has brought together some of the most influential, knowledgeable and capable speakers and delegates that I have ever seen for any highways event, and provides those speakers with an opportunity to share their knowledge with a large audience and, in turn, provide that audience with an opportunity to contribute, challenge and influence possible outcomes and direction for our sector. Before we commence the event presentations, I'd like to place on record a thank you to a range of people without whom this event would not be happening. First and foremost, can I thank Gary Spencer at MEON for the commitment he and his business have shown to this event and the financial and time investment they have made in it. Gary and I started talking about themes for an event as far back as January, when COVID looked to be someone else's problem rather than everyone's problem. We talked about a physical event looking at the challenges facing the sector, only very quickly to see the same challenges confronting almost every aspect of our nation. Our discussions very quickly turned to the how and what needed to change to ensure the highway sector could play a leading role in help driving recovery, and how the challenges that we as a sector have faced for some time can be converted into opportunities to assist in driving recovery. In many ways, this is a true reflection of sectoral leadership, and it's the credit of one of the UK's most forward-looking highway sector SMEs that they've shown that leadership, and by working with clients and other businesses, small and large, showing how we can all make a difference. I would also like to thank all of our speakers and their teams for the work towards developing the day. It's unusual for these types of events to be both free and organised by a company within the sector. More often than not, it's a trade body or commercial event companies that are generating revenue, and they formulate and promote such events. I'm guilty as charged. I have been responsible for a number of them myself in the past. Consequently, it was very pleasing that our speakers committed to the event when we had showed them the scope of what we were trying to do, even when they actually saw that it wasn't an independent organisation, but it was an organisation trying to work for the benefit of the sector as a whole. The response and commitment from the speakers to the event is a fair reflection of the commitment all of them show to the sector and to getting things right. And as you shall see and hear by the content and quality of their presentations, their commitment to seeing our sector build back better. Crucially, we've also garnered the commitment from organisations that not normally associate with or closely allied to the highway sector on a day-to-day basis, although they are, as you will hear, very active in the sector. Now, speaking here in particular of IEMA, the Institute of Environmental Management Assessment. Engaging with Rufus Howard and his CEO, Sarah Mukherjee, on the ideas behind this event was refreshing, and I believe that their involvement will have a longer-term benefit for the sector. Last but not least, I want to thank 250 attendees who have registered for the event, a list of people that is as diverse as it is impressive. Thank you for giving us some of your time to discuss and share these topics. As is normal for such events, I'm sure you'll dip in and dip out throughout the day as work demands, just to try to make that more of a dip in than a dip out, as there's something new and something vital in all of the presentations. And finally, before we get the day formally underway, I'll close on 2 points. One, throughout the day, there are opportunities for your opinions, questions to be aired. There's question and answers after each session and 2 expert round tables. So pitch in with your questions and comments, and we'll try to cover as many of the points that you raise as we can. Secondly, and this to reinforce what Gary was saying, you can make an immediate difference in areas impacted by the highway sector. As part of MEON's corporate social responsibility agenda, they're committed to making cash donations to 3 charities based on the number of delegates participating in today's event. As Gary said, the charities are BREAK, Road Safety Charity, Sustrans, Walking and Cycling Charity, and the Lighthouse Club, the Construction Worker Charity. You'll get the links, you've had the links, but MEON will donate £5 to each organisation for each vote cast for the particular organisations. So without any further ado, and just to curtail the welcoming housekeeping address we'll get underway. We're going to follow a brief video presentation about Build Back Better and the principles behind it. We've drawn on themes out of that presentation of productivity, economy, skills and diversity, collaboration, sustainability and resilience that form the overall presentations for the day. So I'll just pass that over to that presentation on Build Back Better, and then we'll be back with the follow-up to that in due course.
Thank you for taking the time to watch and listen to this short presentation that considers just what the future may hold for the highways sector, the professionals that work within it, and all stakeholders involved in the inputs and outputs of what the highways sector delivers. There is no doubt that the last few months have been unprecedented, and I think it's fair to say that had anyone predicted last year the changes that we've all recently experienced, most of us would have dismissed those predictions as fantasy. But fantasy it isn't, and not only has the immediate past been a strange environment for us all, there's every reason to expect, and perhaps even demand, that the future is also different from what many of us would have previously experienced or expected it to be, and as such, the future will present great challenges and opportunities in equal measure. Much of this challenge and opportunity lie in the government's proposed response to the economic impact of COVID-19. You don't need me to repeat the dire warnings from the economic commentators in respect to job losses, economic stagnation, a lost generation, etc. Indeed, the government's commitment not to return to austerity is very welcome, as certainly for local authorities, any further constriction would have, I believe, led to financial failures and the collapse of many county and even metropolitan authorities, and the operational failure of many more as highways maintenance and other services would most certainly have failed. Whilst the details of the government's New Deal proposals are yet to be fleshed out, we've already heard from both the Prime Minister and the Chancellor that infrastructure projects will be front and centre in getting our economy moving again. And just as significantly, that these projects will be fundamental in building a better Britain and long-term economic opportunity, especially delivering on the government's agenda of levelling up and fostering that opportunity. The background to this is very much rooted in some of the ideas that have emerged over the last few months, and I think that in the immediate post-COVID-19 environment, great emphasis will be placed upon two overriding concepts, being the new normal and building back better. Both of these are an acknowledgement that while we may be unsure what the future holds, it will be markedly different from the immediate past, and a more socially responsible and socially responsive business model will be expected within the delivery of public services. Whilst the new normal is a nebulous concept, often driven by an individual's own perspectives, that of building back better is an already defined structure to which we can bring sectoral interpretation and help to define our own perspectives on what the new normal actually means for highways owners, maintenance organisations and operatives all active in the highways sector. So let's look a bit more closely at the concept of building back better. This is a concept developed by the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction and, in very brief summary, promotes the actions, coordination and stakeholder engagement and development that facilitate a response and restructure of services, structures and organisations in post-disaster environments in order to produce and deliver better outcomes than previously existed. The UN report defines building back better as the use of the recovery, rehabilitation and reconstruction phases after a disaster to increase the resilience of nations and communities through integrating disaster risk reduction measures into the restoration of physical infrastructure and societal systems, and into the revitalisation of livelihoods, economies and the environment. Now, whilst in some circumstances it is tempting to dismiss treating the UK as the site of a natural disaster, this may be to underestimate the sheer scale of the potential economic upheaval that we may face in the coming years, as full impact of the lockdown policies around the globe impact upon both demand and capacity. So at the core of building back better are the following ideas. Medium and long-term rebuilding and sustainable restoration of resilient critical infrastructure, the restoring or improving of livelihoods, and it also defines how government agencies, private sector professionals non-governmental organisational leaders and the public can collaborate to deliver positive results. So much for the concept. How do we move from concept to relevant action? The highways sector is already familiar with the principles of the Build Back Better structure, as rebuilding, sustainability, resilience, collaboration and social value are all aspects that have been emphasised within the sector over the last few years, albeit with inconsistent uptake, delivery and even understanding amongst the diverse range of stakeholders within the sector. It is a demand for these principles and the inconsistency of previous understanding and/or delivery that as a sector we urgently need to address. So let's look at them one by one. Rebuilding. The formation of Highways England and the adoption of the RIS, or Road Investment Strategy structure, acknowledged the need to rebuild our strategic road network. However, there's a clear need to translate this type of approach and the related funding structure to support our local roads network. We need to provide local authorities with clear long-term funding to rebuild the local road network, incentivise this funding and, like Highways England, monitor its implementation. This could be monitored to fulfil other Build Back Better objectives, such as sustainability. Investing in better maintained road networks has a positive environmental effect as it provides opportunity to make the network more efficient with less congestion and pollution, whilst integrating other forms of transport to prioritise appropriate transport solutions that support the economy of our cities and rural areas. Historically, centralised solutions have often failed to understand the different needs of different types of local economies. The current situation and the response to it provides a chance to address that failure. That takes us on to resilience. By adopting the best solution for individual circumstances, we also offer the chance of building true resilience into the network. We all know that under existing constraints, that in the majority of circumstances, the best solution all too commonly equates to the cheapest solution. A surefire way to avoid sustainability and resilience in one fell swoop. The opportunity now surely has to be to adapt to providing those sustainable and resilient solutions, and solutions that acknowledge individual circumstances and, crucially, the emerging technologies that can and will facilitate better use of our road networks by a range of different users, and also future-proofing our networks to allow them to adopt and adapt new technologies as they emerge. Of course, to achieve this, we need to seek to deliver true collaboration. Collaboration has been the go-to word in recent years. However, there's still the feeling that, for most part, it has been more commonly about perception rather than reality, although there is a need to acknowledge some clear exceptions where that has been the reality. If we're really going to deliver a step change in highways maintenance, we need to adopt true collaboration and truly collaborative values throughout the supply chain and with all clients. This means no more gaming contracts and tenders, but working together, quite possibly in an open book manner with clients within agreed metrics and targeted outputs. The models to deliver this are out there and working effectively. They just need to become more widely adopted. Best practice relationships, as pioneered by the Future Highways Research Group and by LCRIG members, and term maintenance and specialist contractors, need to be built upon. That will bring a result of better social value, a key output from the interaction of all those other variables that is effectively the positive impact that Building Back Better approach can have. Rebuilding our network in a sustainable manner, delivering more resilience and long-term changes in approach and efficiency provides opportunity and, in my opinion, can only be achieved by increasing the skills base of our workforce, improving diversity to reflect the makeup of our society, and to generate sound economic value in the communities we work for and within. Strengthening the role of small and medium-sized enterprises rather than just serving the interests of large civil contractors is also key to this outcome. The challenge in identifying and measuring social value is clearly that over the last few years, many models and approaches have been generated, and often a very partial or nuanced output is produced. We need clearer definitions and measurements to ensure comparability across projects and activities. So these are some initial thoughts to stimulate discussion, because we very quickly need to understand the what and wherefore of what we are trying to achieve, deliver and measure. Otherwise, a lot of time, energy and money could be expended without changing all that much.
Well, I hope you found that presentation of interest, and I hope it helps to sort of set the context for the rest of our conference today and the presentations that we're going to have from our various experts. As you can see, the programme for today is structured around the tenets and principles of Build Back Better, and we've structured that into 4 core areas. The first of those is productivity and economy, and we asked for the contribution of LCRIG, Local Council Road Innovation Group, to give their take and their experience in respect to productivity and economy. There is necessarily a lot of overlap in these presentations because all of this is linked together. And therefore you'll see snippets of collaboration, innovation and sustainability in this presentation, as you'll see collateral information in the other presentations. So if we switch over to that presentation now, where we welcome Alec Peachy, Martin Duffy and Will Britton from LCRIG to discuss their views and their perspectives. Please listen carefully. Any questions you've got, we will take questions and answers at the end, and of course we'll have the round table in due course as well. Thank you.
My name is Alec Peachy and I'm the Content Director for the Local Council Roads Innovation Group. LCRIG's mission is to facilitate fresh thinking in innovation and collaboration and to act as a conduit between the highways community. LCRIG also supports the Department for Transport, working in partnership with the sector to enable change through using innovative techniques, not only to help to achieve savings and efficiencies, but to ensure that we all work together to ensure that road users see improved highway services maintained to a standard that people expect and deserve. We're delighted to be forming part of MEON's Build Back Better event. And joining me today, I've got Martin Duffy, who's the Chief Executive of LCRIG, and Will Britton, who is the Founder and President of LCRIG. They're going to be answering questions around productivity and the economy. So without further ado, let's get straight into the questions. So the first question, which is to ask Martin first, is as the country starts to recover from the impact of COVID-19, what are the main challenges facing councils and in particular local highway departments?
I think, Alec, the biggest challenge, and everyone I'm sure would say this first, you know, the biggest challenge that we face within local highway authorities is funding. So, you know, as the money becomes tighter, there's no doubt it will do in the near future, how is that money going to be carved up? We know that Boris Johnson, our Prime Minister, seems to be on the side of infrastructure, breathes the economy, helps the economy. So will we therefore get our fair share of funding for infrastructure developments within the local authority? Or will we continually face the battle that we have done historically with children's services and other departments within the local authority? I think the issue will be as well getting the balance right between those short-term decisions that we need to be taking now to meet those short-term needs, which must be which must support the long-term objectives. So it must be in our long-term interest. Whatever we do now in the short term shouldn't prejudice the benefits that we'll be looking for in the longer term. So I think the economic argument is probably settled, despite the fact we're going to have to fight for money. I think the social value argument is yet to be had. So in terms of things like, you know, releasing some road space for active travel, you know, that's something that many authorities are doing right now. Is it something that will continue with? What I like about the active travel is that there's a really strong, understandable connection with social value. So I think bringing those two things together about breathing life back into the economy through investments in the works that local highway authorities undertake, in conjunction with the social value argument, should indeed put us in a better position.
Okay, thank you. Will?
Yeah, I agree entirely with what Martin said. I think we're all waiting for the autumn statement to see what shape of money is going to actually arrive at local councils. I think we're all in the same boat, and that's one of the reasons that started LCRIG, because, you know, no matter which council you're in, you've all got the same pressures, similar work, you know, obviously different administrations. So, and obviously money is the big issue, seems to be all the time, and the cuts that we've had over the past few years, dependence on which councils are, what stage they're at with their cuts. You know, Blackpool has suffered a great deal in terms of having to make ends meet with financial pressures. And however, you know, I do think, I mean, I've worked for local council now for 40 years, and I just think, you know, what a massive, great sector that we're in, not just highways, but, you know, local councils themselves always seem to do their utmost for the citizens, for the residents and the communities in the UK. And I think we're very fortunate, you know, with local council ethics, that, you know, that we have these people working across the UK in local council. So what are we facing? Well, you know, we are facing, and I think it's typical of many councils, you know, children's services, elderly services. We're, again, at Blackpool under massive pressure there, and, you know, with public protection as well. You know, we're not now, we're classed probably as the poor relation in that situation, in our relationship with other departments. And probably that's why, me personally, I think, you know, you have to stand up. You need to have people who are willing to stand up and, you know, for highways, for the sector, and to do, you've got to obviously do more for less, but going forward, you know, a lot of it is around collaboration and best practice and sharing that as well.
Just picking up on Will's point there, Martin, and also your reference to Boris Johnson, obviously having that key focus on infrastructure. With both those things in mind, how do you think the road sector can position itself so that it's at the forefront of the government's sort of levelling up agenda, as it were?
I think the positioning, I think, is going to be key for us, Alec. You know, what we should do, in my opinion, is shout about what we're good at. And I don't just mean about building and maintaining roads. That's a given. That's what we do. That's what our careers have led us to. When I say shout at what we're good at collaboration, are we not? You know, it was our sector that was one of the first to truly embrace collaboration back in 2010, when the new international standard came online. In fact, it was a British standard at the time. It's now ISO 44001. But many organisations within our sector have gone down that route of seeking formal certification against ISO 44001, which is an absolute credit to them. It speaks volumes about the type of industry we are, in my opinion, that you've got that formal recognition that your business is a collaborator, or it has the ability to collaborate with others to deliver new value to clients that you wouldn't be able to deliver by operating independently. I think we're fantastic in the world of collaboration, and there's lots other sectors could learn from us. Then it's innovation. Innovation, we've got a long way to go, and Will and I have many discussions about innovation. It's it's the key focus, in fairness, of a procurement that Will is currently leading, and we'll hear probably more about that in this session. But the world of innovation is key to us. We need to do better and then position ourselves where we can demonstrate that leadership, pan-industry level, across those two key areas of collaboration and of innovation, as opposed to needing to follow others because we're told we've got to do it.
Will?
Yeah, well, you know, the road sector can offer such a lot, you know, post-COVID, in that is obviously, you know, and I'm not going to break this down much because it's well known that, you know, the way any country transports goods and services around the networks is it's crucial and important, you know, not just road but rail as well, and public transport. And I think, yeah, there needs to be a rethink, you know, about putting more money into infrastructure, and I'm pretty hopeful that Boris is going to follow through on that, particularly. So, but I think, you know, in terms of motorways, trunk roads, that's important, but we mustn't forget the local roads, because it's so important for all the towns, the communities, and the safety and the well-being of those places. And there's such a lot of funding, you know, that we need to be constantly driving to improve our local roads in each of the towns. And that's where I think, you know, we can offer such a lot, because it's not just about, you know, very large companies doing very large schemes. It's about all the, you know, perhaps the SMEs and even micro SMEs, making those active, keeping the businesses alive. You know, some of them have been nearly folding, and that's a stress that we don't want to really handle. We want to keep all of these businesses going, you know, with their innovation. And I'll talk a little bit more about innovation, you know, in this session. But so, yeah, the road sector really, you know, together with bridges, structures, you know, there's such a lot. Obviously, it's a no-brainer in terms of what it offers to come out of COVID.
And just staying with you for a second then, Will, where does LCRIG fit into all of this? Obviously, you founded the organisation in 2013, so I just wondered if you could touch upon, you know, what the position of LCRIG is and how it plays into all of the things we've been talking about so far. Okay, yeah, well, I founded LCRIG really because at Blackpool we've done, you know, some good things, we thought, and I've always sort of took the position that we're not the best thing since sliced bread. And I formed it because I wanted to more share what we've done, and then take a realistic view, and perhaps get my peers, you know, in other councils to come to the table and not only share but give us some critique back. And I've always found, you know, when you get around a table with like-minded people and you roll your sleeves up, I used to go away from the original meetings with more than I put in. And I think that's where, you know, the real value is in particularly in local government, because there's that trust and relationship which I talked about at Strictly, is you know, that's what our strengths are. There's a unique sort of selling point there with LCRIG, I think, in that we don't need to go much further than our sector, because all the skills and knowledge that are within the sector are already there. We don't need anybody else coming into the sector to try and teach us how to suck eggs. You know, every local council has its own teams of people, and the suppliers that they use are always on hand to share their knowledge and support the sector. So really, LCRIG is really the glue that holds all that together, and to keep on sharing the knowledge, the innovation particularly, because that is so important. You know, if we just stand still, innovation will pass you by, and you'll miss chances, because there are things that are out there being developed right now that we've not even thought about. And that's more true in probably the technological sort of aspects of highways and traffic management. So, you know, we've got to grab those opportunities and make the most of them. So, and I think we'll touch on this again in this session. Yeah, Martin, as the Chief Executive, you've obviously recently taken LCRIG to become a community interest company. Again, from your point of view, where does LCRIG fit into everything that we've been talking about? Obviously, echo a lot of what Will's been saying.
I was going to say, I'd like to say that Will has left me something to add to what he's shared with us, but Will's covered the topic superbly there. You know, I would say, you know, LCRIG, we're in the epicentre of what's going on. here as we come through COVID-19. You know, whether or not that's supporting our members with their procurements, and we should talk more about Project Amber perhaps shortly, Will, and what we're achieving there with Project Amber, about engaging SMEs in a constructive way that SMEs can manage it and cope with it and produce good bids and position themselves with an opportunity of winning places on these frameworks, as opposed to being beaten by the best bid writer, which may well be the organisations who are not best placed to deliver the work. Will touched on all the expertise being within our members already. Absolutely right. We're experiencing that right now. Only this morning we were talking more about the very first peer review that LCRIG currently undertaking for the City of York Council. All the expertise exists. We've got a team of 8 reviewers of the highest levels of expertise that the UK has to offer in terms of asset management, who are feeding into this one asset management plan for York. By the time we've concluded on this piece of work, York will have a much better, much more robust, much more rigorous asset management plan. I think we're in a great position to coordinate innovations that are being brought to the market that suppliers, in fairness, are struggling to bring to the market because clients continually telling them that there isn't an opportunity for them to work with them because they're not on this framework or that framework. So there's no route to market for some of these smaller organisations. We're doing something about that right now. The one thing I do know that DFT are really keen on is that LCRIG seem to be the one body that brings everybody together, suppliers and clients in the same room at the same time, so that, you know, the contractors get that really important airtime with the clients, and the clients, for the first time in many instances, get to comprehensively understand what the market can offer. So I really feel that LCRIG you know, is very central to all of this.
I just add that I'll keep this short, but we've only just scratched the surface really at LCRIG in terms of what we were going to do and are still going to do. And obviously it's this blasted virus that has held us back a little bit. But yeah, it's been a lot of thought, and LCRIG has periods of quietness, and probably that's been noticeable over since the last Strictly conference. But there's been a lot of planning and careful thought around the shape of LCRIG, because it's been designed around local councils really, and that's why, you know, we don't want some massive organisation being held somewhere, you know, that's awkward to get to. It needs to be open. We're everybody's friend, and you know, we want everybody to be friends with us, and it's that relationship that I think we've already got within local councils. Again, I'm going about this trust and trust and confidence, and that's really what I think we all have, and we can develop that even much further. And there's more plans to come out to bring information from every council to place it on the doorstep of DFT, to make that data and, you know, things about assets and technology, so that we've got a better linkage of understanding from the DFT, from the local councils. So that's another plan we've got developing right now. So yeah, we'll move on.
Yeah, and earlier you talked about, you know, the risk of innovation passing the industry by to some degree. So with that in mind, and what role will innovation play in ensuring that highway departments, you know, can build back better in light of the theme of this event today? Yeah,
well, again, I talked a little bit strictly about innovation, and if you're in the health service and there's some new technique to transplant a liver, you know, I think that's shared amongst, you know, the health service, and it's not long before they all start adopting similar techniques, a bit like COVID and this, you know, the hopeful vaccine that we're all going to be having. You know, they're sharing that across the blinking world. So it's a no-brainer that you've got some innovation that you need to be trying it. You need to be starting to think about using it, because, you know, I'm not going to, the old adage of, you know, you always do what you always did, you only get what you always got. But it's very true. So, you know, LCRIG is going to be right at the forefront of encouraging innovation and being that conduit, because it's all right having the innovation, but it's actually embedding it. And that's why I asked Martin to join me at LCRIG to actually get it embedded. And just like to thank Martin for all his really hard work, and, you know, particularly in the early stages of what we're seeing now with Project Amber, has been a long aspiration of mine, but Martin has really, you know, paid dividends to that, and managed to get something out there which I think is going to be really valuable to the sector.
So do you want to just quickly add on innovation then, Martin?
Yeah, in the world of innovation, you know, I think that, you know, first of all, we've got to remove the sting of failing, haven't we? You know, in terms of new products, materials and processes being brought to market. We've got to challenge the traditionalist, because if we don't, it won't be long before Google are managing our assets and not our local highway authorities. You know, think back in recent times to the likes of Kodak. You know, they were reluctant to move into the world of digitisation, of the digital camera. They wanted to stay with film because it cornered the market. Now, tell me when the last time you saw a Kodak camera out in the market. You know, think of IBM, who wouldn't move towards personalised computers, and where are they now? You know, and yet Dell's in every home in the world, and many, many other laptop computer manufacturers as well. Nokia, we all had a Nokia, didn't we? I remember mine, was it a 3110? The mobile phones that we had. And now they entered the market, that new market of the smartphones, too late, and have lost massive share in the market. So my plea to all of us in our industry is, come on, we need to get a grips with this, because otherwise someone else will, and it'll be taken from us.
What about the procurement methodologies, though? Are they conducive to helping drive innovation forward, would you say?
I'm afraid our procurement methodologies are not fit for purpose as we stand today. What Will has done within, and I've been supporting Will to do it on Project Amber, is absolutely one of a kind. But it makes all the sense in the world. We want to go out there and we want to find the UK's best innovators who can help us with things which are faster, cheaper and better to maintain our network. Will and no one else knows how to specify that, because we don't know what's out there. We don't know what the chap is doing in his garage down the road in Lancashire or in Plymouth or in Cornwall. But by going out to the market and seeking expressions of interest from organisations of that nature on the premise of 100% quality evaluation, we can do that. Because how could we ask for a price of something that we don't know how to specify? So the local government's got to be more agile in the way in which it goes about looking at procurement in the future. It's got to change.
And what were your thoughts on that then, Will? Well, I think Martin's covered that really well. So do we want to talk about Project Amber more specifically now, or?
Yeah, you can do, yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, it was following a technical training day, something that LCRIG offer. And like I say, when I said that it's not a massive organisation, well, perhaps I'm wrong. It is, because what I have said is that everybody is a member of LCRIG. You know, it's not me, it's not Martin, it's all of the UK councils really who are LCRIG. You know, it is local council, so it's not sort of belongs to me. We've made it into a community interest company to pay back, you know, into the community, as the term says. But in terms of Project Amber, following a technical training day, when I saw techniques that I'd never seen before, materials I'd never seen before, I looked at the faces of my own team, because they'd never seen them either, and they've been around a bit. There was a transformation in our thinking. And I think obviously it's always the thinking that drives that purpose, you know, when you're going to do something, you know, something new. So I quickly established in my mind that all of these SMEs and, you know, one-man bands need to be given a chance to come to the market. And they felt, I think, you know, that was difficult because they'd never been used to doing tenders. They've not, you know, if you've got 2 people running a company, they haven't got another division to go and do procurements, you know, put tenders in. And some of these people have never even filled in a questionnaire, you know, like a normal questionnaire, you know, health and safety, your financials, never been, you know, parted to that. So the first thing, I sort of laid a bit of a gauntlet down in front of Martin, really, you know, and the RSTA as well were in the initial concept meetings. And I said, you know, can we come up with a UK-wide framework, and should LCRIG be trying to push something out? Well, within 10 minutes, I was convinced, really, that actually what that would do would block the market again, because you're going to have a, say, a 4-year framework UK-wide. You might get 15 to 20 people on that. And therefore the others, you know, would have to wait, or you'd have to come up with some more, you know, different framework. So very quickly, it was decided, and Martin drove this, you know, that we'd have a regional or a local framework, and we did one in Blackpool, which exists for 4 years. But there are 2 things here. One is that any UK LCRIG Council can dip into our framework to use our suppliers. So very quickly, the suppliers who are on board, and I think that's absolutely marvellous and wonderful. And plus, we are offering free of charge to give our contract out to any other council that wants to create their own framework. And we're on hand, particularly, you know, Martin, we're on hand to give advice, because we're going through actually the evaluation of Project Amber now. We've gone through SQ stage 1. And then we're now into stage 2, which is the questions which ask more, you know, the technical, the innovation, the environmental, and perhaps they only need to change one of the questions, which is around social value, which is obviously different in any council you go to. And we've already got the sort of 3 or 4 local councils interested already in using that framework. And as LCRIG, you know, we'll be on hand to help them push that through. But what that does, it sets up a family of innovators, or, you know, innovation suppliers in these different areas. And there'll be different companies each time that win their place onto that framework. And that's what we're hoping to see grow and grow throughout the UK, throughout the network of LCRIG.
Okay, thanks. And just finally, then, we started the conversation today on the subject of COVID-19. But what lessons do you think that the sector should learn from the pandemic? You know, you touched upon, Will, for example, earlier, you know, the importance of local roads in keeping the economy going, for example. You know, that's obviously going to continue to be very important and of value going forward. But what lessons do you think the sector could learn, I suppose, more widely from the pandemic?
Well, knowing the position I'm in here, I mean, obviously I'm head of this service, and communication, apart from the first day when ready to throw my computer out the window at home, I think we've all learned, haven't we, that, you know, technology is at the forefront of the way we do business. So are we going to, you know, what would you take out of this era? Well, we'll take forward that you don't, you know, need to necessarily travel hundreds of miles in your working day to do normal business. There are times when you do need to get together, because body language does count for an awful lot. But, you know, communication is probably the biggest thing, really, and I think that's a big part of what LCRIG is going to push forward. And that's why we're going to use the tools that we've got, and we've all learned to use much more widespread. We're going to sort of gather information off local councils to share that, the best practice, the natural. I did say it strictly, we didn't want council officers to do more by becoming an LCRIG member. We've already got enough to do, thank you very much. So we just want to not reinvent the wheel, but we want to use the natural resources and information that's already resides in the industry, but put it to more efficient use, particularly between us and the DFT, who need to know what our problems are, need to know where to spend their money. And I'm sure that would satisfy the government ministers, that they can be shown that this sector is amazing and they're doing the best we can with the money that we've got.
And any closing remarks from yourself there, Martin?
Well, just to, reiterate the point that Will makes about communication. Absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. We do put a lot of effort into it within our sector. Are we doing enough? Probably not, evidenced by, during this lockdown period, our essential workers, our road workers, have still been going out to maintain the network so that people can still move about safely on the network. And yet we know that there's been a whole series of cases of abuse of our road workers. Now, why is that? Is that they just don't appreciate what it is that we're trying to achieve on their behalf? So I would feel that, we must get stronger at communicating what the essential nature of our service is, how it does contribute to the economy, how it does contribute to social value, both at the local level with the laymen, with the lay people, lay persons, and with our politicians.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Will, do you want to add to that?
No, it's a great point, actually. And I was just thinking in my mind, that there was probably about 2 days lost right at the beginning. But that's all, but our operators were still out there. And yeah, we had to divide the team up and come up with a different way of working, split shifts and get everybody safe. But we weren't the best. I talked to many councils in those early days, and there's some fantastic examples of the way that, in this sector, local government officers just, we're out there and coming up with, accommodation for suppliers. There's tons of best practice that came out of those early weeks. And yeah, it's just that ethic, isn't it? That, the way, the style in which local councils still kept going, particularly in the highway sector. And yeah, the highway heroes, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a good place to end it, I think, and it does conclude today's sessions. It just remains for me to say thank you to both Martin and Will for their time today. Please do take the time to visit our website at www.lcrig.org.uk, where you will find out lots of information about what we're doing and the services that we offer to our members. So thanks again to Martin and Will. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you to Will Britton, Martin Duffy and Alec Peachy from LCRIG for that contribution. I think you'll agree that that really helps open up the discussion and shows you the scope and range of some of the issues that are being addressed by LCRIG and how that actually flows into the rest of the sector. It really is quite a comprehensive level of coverage. Unfortunately, neither Will nor Martin can stay with us live. However, I'm very pleased to welcome Sean Rooney, who's the Head of Service for Highway Maintenance at Oxfordshire County Council, who is very heavily involved with LCRIG, I think actually Southern Chair of LCRIG, and also Don Brown, the editor of Highways magazine, who has obviously has this almost unique position within the sector in that he can actually have a 360-degree view without any particular bias or skew of view. So we've been gathering up some questions from delegates throughout that first session, so thank you for that. Just a reminder to keep on submitting questions and we'll do our utmost to get as many of those asked and answered. And if we don't get them answered, then we'll certainly follow up. So without any further ado in respect to that, gentlemen, I've got some questions here, some relating specifically to LCRIG and others to more sort of industry-wide topics. So maybe if I could start asking Sean, and obviously Dom, your perspective would be welcome as well. I think what we've been asked here is the fact that LCRIG are delivering a step change in approach by linking more closely with specialist SMEs in the sector. And the question is this a real game changer, or can only large civils contractors deliver authority-wide maintenance? Will was very prominent there in saying we must keep small businesses alive locally. So there's a real challenging question there. Can it actually work with specialist SMEs, or is it only large civils contractors that can deliver highway maintenance in a sustainable manner?
I think what's been proven not only in Blackpool with Project Amber, as Will's mentioned a number of times.
Sean, I'm not hearing you.
Okay. Can you hear me?
All right, we can hear you now, Sean. Sorry that.
Thank you for that. Yeah, what Will's proved up in Blackpool is that the SMEs can actually deliver a service for local authorities. I think, you know, the tier one, the larger organisations really do have a place within the industry. But as you know, the topic of the conference is building back better. And we mentioned about building that resilience. And I think resilience does start from the bottom up as well. And the smaller SMEs, we've got to give them a chance. We've got to give them a chance to actually impact on the way that we do things. Dare I say that some of the larger organisations may not wish to have the same level of impetus or drive to actually look at innovative procedures, to look at those, you know, those new ideas, those ideas that come from the garden shed, I think as Martin said, you know, down in Plymouth or wherever that may be. So I think the answer in short is yes, it does, it's important. And I think with you know, what LCRIG are really pushing for is that it's that regional small SME ability to tap into other local authorities. You know, we value the local authorities with the RAMS framework. It's open to all authorities as members. We've got 67 council members that are able to do this. So you could actually have an SME that's based down in Plymouth providing a service for someone up in Cumbria. You know, because those regional networks, that's what LCRIG is all about. It is about that glue. It is about joining the people together to actually provide the services and those best practice across the board. So it's a long-winded answer, but in short, yes.
I think that's really, really pertinent there, Sean, because it's the value that can add to the local community that fits into the principles of Build Back Better. Don, what's your take on this, and in terms of experience of seeing smaller businesses taking a greater role, and also the response of the larger tier one organisations to this initiative?
Yeah, I think there's lots of good points made. I would also point out that there's a lot of big businesses that started off as SMEs. Let's not forget that. FM Conway is a very large name in the sector now. Started off in 1961, a few men and a van, and now has over 1,500 staff, based primarily in the southeast. So it was a kind of local contractor for councils in the southeast, and built up a relationship with some of the councils there for over 40 years. That's just one example. I think geography can be a problem in our industry. It depends obviously what you're working on, but sometimes logistics can be an issue. So there is a certain difficulty expanding outside. So a regional base can be really useful for SMEs, although I take Sean's point that at times it can be, you can go national. I think for me, what I would say is it's best if we can build up a kind of habitual integration with SMEs. If this is done, I mean, as LCRIG are trying to do, set up a framework, make it a regular thing and try and push it past just 4 years. There needs to be systems within our industry that are there year in, year out. So it's not just, oh, they're trying a new initiative up in the northeast now, I'll go there, and oh, there's something down in the southwest, so we'll run over there. The last thing I think we need is more and more kind of competition and bidding and transactional difficulties. We need a system that is there constantly to kind of provides an elevator to lift people up slowly along the ladder, to provide them with opportunities for economies of scale and opportunities to test out innovations. And so I think that's missing at the moment. LCRIG are doing good work to try and provide that. We're also missing a proper testing facility for a lot of innovations. I'll speak up for the Road Safety Markings Association, George, you know well, who have been trying for a long time to try and get some innovative testing done on a Highways England's roads. And for one reason or another, it hasn't happened. And that's something I think we need to look at as well, which again, I think Project Amber is helping with. So yeah, good initiatives, but there's some work to do to make it a constant part of our sector.
Thanks for that, John. I think it's a really pertinent point. I mean, actually on the road marking one, the potential site was actually identified at the start of 2015. And there's still not a marking on the road. So that really tells its own story in many respects, although I don't know the intimacies of that in recent years. Coming back to that actually, so we've got an environment with potential for greater involvement from SMEs, but we've got a contracting environment that's still driven by CCT, compulsory competitive tendering. Sean, have you seen any evidence, or Don, have you seen any evidence that government is willing to actually be a bit more flexible in its approach and give local authorities more latitude in how they engage with highway maintenance contracts, or is this something that really needs to be taken as a challenge towards government?
I think they recognise that there is a challenge. It's far from ideal. It's far from seeking a resolution. I think we've got a great foot in the door with DFT through Barry, who's a great advocate of LCRIG. But I think it's early doors conversation. I think we do need to do something, and there's a number of authorities. We're reaching a time in the industry now where there's probably 10, 15 large local authorities looking to go to retender in the next 3 to 5 years, and that's going to have a massive impact on the industry as a whole in terms of capacity. So we've got to adopt different methodologies to not just look at those big issues. We've got to look at that flexibility, and I think it's proving in frameworks such as the work that we've done up in Blackpool that it can work. It's just scaling it up now. It's scaling it up into that regional activity, into the the national activity. And I think as we grow through industry connections with LCRIG, through everyone else, it's that knowledge sharing, and it's communicating. Some of the comments that were made in the presentation. We don't shout enough about what we do. We don't shout about the fact that Martin mentioned there. It'd be interesting to see how many actually picked up on it. That 100% quality assessment in terms of a procurement. The price doesn't come into it, because how can you price for something you don't know what's being done? So I think it is those small steps. We do need to continue to work with DFT and other organisations nationally and promote that flexibility.
Any comments, Don?
From my point of view, one of the issues, I think DFT just lacks capacity. There's been, a huge amount of work to be done on Brexit and COVID now. I think they'd like to have local authorities take more of a lead. They'd like to see people, be as innovative as they possibly can. But if there's a barrier there, if there's a law that needs to be changed, if there's something that needs to be made more flexible, I'm not sure how quickly the DFT can do it. I'm not sure how many people they have available to carry out any support. I think it's been a problem for a while that DFT have had lots of great ideas, lots of good suggestions. The Highways Made to See efficiency program is something I'm sure many people here will be familiar with. A great initiative. Initially started out as having ambitions for 30% savings in the sector to help people, and it was going to be sector led. But within 5 years or so, the DFT wanted to drop it, and it just kind of died a death, and it kind of evaporated. So the problem is DFT aren't able to perhaps provide that central leadership that you need to sometimes unlock greater flexibility. If you look at, say, the emergency active travel money that was released. We had 250 million released very quickly to local authorities, basically told to get on with it. And then when people started complaining, the DfT turned around and said, oh, well, we didn't really mean that. But then they didn't provide any guidance, and they didn't provide that kind of support. So I think they need to have confidence to lead, to empower other people to do their own thing, if you see what I mean.
I think just to add to that, Don, because it's a point well made, that capacity of DfT, and I think, you know, the work that we're doing with them to build that, because it's almost that, you know, they throw an idea out to the industry and they're looking for someone to pick it up and run with it, you know. And with, you know, 67 council members, we've got associate and consultants as well within the organisation. So there's that growing body to work with, you know, other organisations, whether it be the Highways Council, whether it be, you know, all the adept as well. And I know that Mark's speaking in a little while, but we're not opposing anybody. We're just trying to act as that glue. And, you know, regular conversations with the likes of Steve from the DfT are taking place. And it's just those small steps, because I think the industry have to deliver what the DfT would like to sometimes. HMEP, yeah, it was a great initiative. It all started off with all whistles and bells. Unfortunately, why did it fail? Because was it the funding, or was it the fact that there wasn't the interest there? I think the interest is there, because that's been proven with a number of organisations that have been set up, especially over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think if you look at like peer reviews which came out of HMEP, you know, they're obviously massively popular. I think almost every council would love to have a peer review. But yeah, sorry, George.
No, actually, the subject peer review is a very, very, very pertinent point, because we've got a question here actually saying that LCRIG peer reviews can help in respect to promoting new approaches and encouraging innovation. But judging by the success of the peer reviews to date, the demand for these peer reviews, as it did with HMEP, is likely to rocket. And we've got a real challenge in our hands in terms of people who've got day jobs and are under pressure within their own home authorities. So how do we bridge that gap? The question was asking, how can we empower peer reviews and actually cope with the potential demand that sits next to them? Is there any consideration at the moment in respect to that, or how we can manage that process?
Yeah, I mean, I actually sat on the peer review when, as Martin referred to, up at York. You know, I think some of the old HMEP peer reviews, they were quite lengthy, let's be honest. And there's a lot of preparation. There was a lot of work that's involved on both sides, those reviewers and those being reviewed. I think working with MCIG and MHA over the past number of years as well, they've recognised that and looking at a light touch peer review. And I think that's the way to go forward. You know, it's not a case of having to come in and do a full review of absolutely everything about your service. Focus on those key areas that you need to improve, those areas for that, you know, you've internal audit have picked up on, your members are picking up on. So focus on that. And I think, you know, we had 8 people on the peer review for York, but that's 8 people out of 63 authorities. It's starting to build up that resource, because it's not just about myself, Will, Martin sitting on the peer review panel, but as it grows, there'll be other organisations. You know, I'd strongly encourage more people to get involved in the southern area, so that we can do southern reviews, as well as the north and the east. And, you know, we do cover the nation. So I think it is an absolute challenge. You're absolutely right, George. You know, personally, fully aware of the pressures that we face, and, you know, to do the day job. But I think if we don't take time out to do some of this, the day job becomes more difficult, because you're not seeing those improvements being made. You're not seeing that learning, because, you know, you sat there in a bubble and you're just doing what you've done forever, and you don't learn, you don't move on. So the peer reviews, I think it is an issue with capacity, but we grow people, we engage with more and more people through the organisations, and it starts to build up the resource that's able to do it.
Yeah, I think peer reviews could be quite a useful tool, not just for the council they're being conducted with, but for the conductors. So we've got a huge amount of talent and skill that is of the older generation in the sector. I think we all know that, but it's an enormous resource, and we're trying to replace some of the skills that we might be missing further down the chain, or sorry, provide some of the skills that we might be missing. I think peer review is potentially one way where we could bring people together almost as a mentoring practice, so that you bring a young engineer with you on the peer review, and you say, watch me carry out this peer review, watch how I look at these services, and learn something from that. So by shadowing a peer review, young people coming into our sector can get a real good overview, and that's a kind of crash course apprenticeship in the management of a highways service. I think, you know, mentoring programs, things like that, that we kind of combine these two sides to the sector, where we have almost people who have too many skills, and we have people who are coming in who are perhaps underskilled. You know, bringing those two together through the peer review process might be beneficial.
And it may well be the case as well, Dom. I think a pertinent point. Actually, maybe some benefit in private sector people sitting within the peer review to understand more clearly. Sean, this may be the case already, and apologies for my ignorance in respect to that, but actually, you mentioned apprentices, Dom, but actually, we can actually bring some of the apprentices from the private sector in to sit in on the peer reviews. They'll get a clearer and greater understanding of the issues and pressures that the clients are under as well.
No, you're absolutely right, George. There were private sector colleagues sitting in on the peer review, and it brought a different dimension and an interesting dimension to that. So it wasn't just local authority reviews. But Dom, you're absolutely right. I refer to them affectionately as grey-haired filing cabinets. How do we actually download all that information from those grey-haired filing cabinets? You know, the industry, and Richard, I think he's moving on to it in the next presentation, you know, in terms of skills and how do we build that resilience? You know, the Build Back Better mentioned about resilience in George's opening presentation. It's not just about resilience of the network, it's the resilience of the industry. And if we do lose all those skills gaps, you know, I'm a youngster compared to some, I know others may think I'm very old, I don't mind. But, you know, it's getting the gap closed, because it is a big problem that we need to address.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for that. We've actually got quite a few questions outstanding, but just looking at the timetable that we're running to at the moment, we want to try and keep to that. I'll maybe bring some of those back in the round table after the next presentation. There's issues here about getting message across to government. But I think the phrase that was used in the presentation and quoted here is the sting of failure. How do we get the message across to government? Can it be right first time, every time? And I think that reflects back on the comments that Dom was making about the issues around active travel grants and the likes of that. Issues around procurement structures and making a difference for innovators, etc., encouraging the market. So we'll bring some of those back for the next session, after the next session when we have the round table. So we'll have the next session, which is Richard Hayes, representing the IHE. And Richard's going to be talking about skills and diversity. So Richard will do a session, there'll be a Q&A with Richard afterwards, so please get your questions in and we'll facilitate those questions. And then we'll move on to the round table to explore in more detail some of the issues that have been raised as well. So.